we have the CEO of Cayman Enterprise City, Mr. Charlie Kirkconnell, and on the line, the Economist, I think extraordinaire, certainly one of the best advisors of the Caribbean, and stalwart academically as also practically, Ms. Marla Dukharan. Maybe to tell us a little bit about yourself, the work that you do, and especially within the Caribbean, but we'll get into the Cayman perspective at some point. Would that be okay to share with us, our listeners?
Sure. Well, I'm from Trinidad. I live in Barbados. I have been here for, just since 2018. And I pretty much cover, or I should say, from an economic surveillance standpoint, look at almost all the countries in the Caribbean, except for the French. I mean, data is very difficult for many countries, but for the French especially. So, and it's really fascinating to see the similarities, but more so the differences, because so many people from even within the region, but especially outside of the region, think that we are pretty much the same, and we're not. Of course, there are similarities, but there are quite important differences as well, historical differences, cultural differences, and those things matter when it comes to policy making. What will work in Barbados will not necessarily work in Jamaica, will not necessarily work in Cayman.
As Marla alluded to, there are a variety of ways that the government can stimulate the economy. One of them, might be direct spending. But in the case of our project, what the government decided to do was to offer concessions through Cayman Enterprise City with a requirement that CEC invest in promoting the jurisdiction, invest in attracting the businesses of the future, if you will. They are certainly the here and now, actually, as well. But the businesses and the industries of the future to set up a physical presence here and to create economic activity within the Cayman Islands, just by virtue of them being here and operating from here. One thing I'd like to note is that we've reported annually and publicly on the economic impact of the concessions available to businesses that set up in the SEZ since 2013. We consider it to be very, very important that if we are entrusted with this opportunity to offer concessions and deliver results, that we need to publicly account for it, and that's what we do. Through the years, since like I said, since 2013, we've engaged an independent Cayman-based accounting firm to essentially put together the report based on data that we provide, in part, that we provide to them. But this year, we decided to take it one very significant step further by asking Marla, as a very recognized regional economist, to analyze the socioeconomic impact of our project. And that's why we, including Marla, are here today.
To share with us what you saw, what you think of it, were there any things in particular that may have been striking in a sense, and share some of your findings if you would.
Sure. So, one of the most striking things for me, and of course I'm in love with numbers and always use evidence to justify any of my statements and recommendations and so on, but it's sometimes you can't always boil things down to numbers. And to me, what was the most important effect that I am seeing of Cayman Enterprise City on the wider economy is that of economic diversification, and the diversification that it helps to support and drive. And this is a most powerful and invaluable benefit, and it yields benefits that I think can't adequately be quantified. So I can't give you the number on what that economic diversification means in terms of dollars and cents, but it's certainly invaluable in terms of building economic resilience. Because what diversification does is it means that, okay, so if my economy is mostly run by tourism and financial services, these are service sectors that rely on face-to-face, a lot of face-to-face, especially in tourism. And as we saw with this pandemic, you know, when that one or two of the major industries that you depend on suffer, everything grinds to a halt. And so it's sort of a risk management strategy to have a diversified economy where not all sectors will be affected the same, and some may benefit whilst another is being negatively affected. And so that kind of economic diversification, I think, is critical to building socioeconomic resilience for the long term, and that is where I think Cayman Enterprise City is most powerful. Now, beyond that, first of all, Cayman Enterprise City is sort of an investment promotion agency which the government does not have to fund. In most countries, in this region and outside of the region, the government actually creates an institution that's an investment promotion agency that they fund and they staff, and they have a subvention in their budget every year to help to drive foreign direct investment, whether in existing industries or whether in diversified sectors. And the government of the Cayman Islands did not have to do this, right? So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is CEC does what it does very well. They were ranked #1 free zone in the Americas in 2020 and #5 globally. So clearly they're doing a great job and fulfilling their mandate. And so that's the other thing that's really, the other two things that's really powerful is that they're driving diversification and they're doing it successfully, and they're not relying on government to do it. And finally, the nature of the sectors that the companies in the special economic zone, you know, the sectors that they're involved in are really high-tech, high-skilled, high-wage sectors.
Cayman Enterprise, we can ease the way in. It says, you know, project has come online. They've built so many units. They've spent so much money, and it's going to have this amount. We can quantify that much easier, but it doesn't take and paint a true picture of what it is to the country, the cost as well as the contribution, without, you know, looking at the economic impact. And Cayman, you know, being a service-based sector, the opportunity for people, say in the technology sector, to come here, and for those who live and work here to be employed, there's a great transfer of knowledge that can take place. So in a knowledge-based economy, having a space like Cayman Enterprise City can bode well for today, and as you said, for generations to come.
Indeed, and I think what, you know, you can't place a dollar figure on and a value on is that ecosystem that is created in Cayman Enterprise City, because you've brought all of these players in technology-related sectors, and very progressive sectors, and sectors that are, you know, much more in demand now. And that ecosystem means that there is that level of support and feedback mechanisms. There is, as you say, transfer of knowledge, education, there's internships, and then therefore there is growth and blossoming.
Right.
Unless you have that kind of ecosystem in place, then everybody's in silos, and there's only so much, there's no cross-pollination,
right.
There's no real synergies being derived. And so that's what's really important, I think, as well about Cayman Enterprise City, the fact that it creates this ecosystem. And, you know, with respect to your point around the transfer of knowledge, that's actually the missing link in, you know, in this region. We've adopted, whether deliberately or by accident, an FDI, largely an FDI, foreign direct investment driven development strategy, where we don't have a lot of capital locally. So what we do is we invite foreign capital and foreign expertise and private sector players from across the globe to come and set up shop here in our various jurisdictions and operate. Now, the thing about it is, the ironic thing about that kind of development strategy is, unless you have that deliberate local content stipulation and deliberate transfer of knowledge stipulation, then what has happened, and we've experienced it in many countries across the region, is that we expect the transfer of knowledge and the domestic and organic, if you will, benefit spreading throughout the economy. We expect it organic, and that's very slow. It's like a trickle-down process, which is extremely slow, if non-existent. And it really just does not work very well. Whereas what we see in Cayman Enterprise City, there's a huge emphasis on education. As a matter of fact, I think that the education budget and the amount of effort and expenditure that's devoted to education and internships and training and so on is quite significant, if not the most significant of any private entity. So outside of the government, I think this is probably the largest level of spending, or proportion, I should say, of spending of any entity that you will see on education. And so, you know, they are fulfilling a role that really is going to upskill and leverage the effects of foreign direct investment the way no other country, I think, has really done intentionally and deliberately across the region that I can see. And that's really how you harness the benefit. It's not just the capital. You have to transfer the knowledge. And the thing about the capital, if I just might stick that in as well, is that you would find that just when there are problems, just when things get shitty, like the global financial crisis or COVID or any other crisis, that's when the foreign direct investment firms want to pack up shop and leave, because they perceive the level of risk to be too high and it's going to put a dent in their profitability. And that's just when your economy can't afford for them to leave. But the way that it's structured in Cayman Enterprise City, you know, they're not just coming here and setting up a business and you know, they're actually becoming part of an ecosystem and a community. And so I feel like there is more stickiness, if you will, and more commitment to staying and to remaining part of the ecosystem, because you thrive in it.
Right.
Continue on Marla's point. It's tied to some very significant obligations on our part to be a great corporate citizen, to work on things like knowledge transfer, and we take our obligations very seriously, and in fact we exceed them. I will say our obligations, certainly, like I said, they are significant, but we exceed them annually. You know, things like our internship programs, our mentorship programs, our Unitalks program, which is a guest lecturer program that we have with UCCI. You know, we take all of these things very, very seriously, because you know, that is you know, those obligations are significant and they're important, and being tied to the concessions. You know, we don't take them lightly, and we're not going to make excuses for you know, for, well, we didn't do this because of that, and we didn't do this because of that. You know, we are fully committed to living up to our obligations and even exceeding them. So then, to answer your question, you know, the agenda for CEC is more of the same. You know, we are you know, very invested in making you know, the special economic zone a significant driver of the local economy. We're very invested in helping to help, you know, finally, you know, help Cayman achieve some of that economic diversification that will stand us well in things like COVID. And one of the things that I can confirm that has happened, you know, since our borders have opened up, we've probably had the busiest period of our existence. And as difficult as that has been for me personally at times, because it is a lot to handle, it shows the wisdom in the government green-lighting our project many years ago, and because it has created a driver for foreign direct investment at a time when the country really needs it.
Yeah, so a general populace, from the politician to the policymaker to those who are impacted by all that happens. how we can perhaps play a greater role in supporting not just the development of our technology sector, the Cayman Enterprise City, but to see how this additional layer to our economy is positively impacting us today, but for the future.
That's an important question, and I'm glad you asked that question, Mr. Ebanks, because not many people ask that question. Not what can my government do for me, but what can I do for my country? Yeah, I think, you know what, it is so important for us, everybody, to realize that the future is not going to be anything like it was, things were in the pre-COVID era. I hear people all the time asking, and they ask me, when do things get back to the way they were in 2019? I think they will never get back to exactly the way they were in 2019.
Right.
So if you think about what happened in 9/11, for example, and how that affected the way airports work, and AML and CFT legislation and regulations, for example, that event changed things in a material way globally until today. I mean, so forever, if you will. And I feel like this sudden stop that we experienced last year and the effects that it has had are only beginning to ripple now. So if things are going to be different, materially different, then we have to change or be willing to change our mindset as to how should we be doing things going forward. We should be doing things differently and or we should be doing different things. And I think that change mindset is very important. I think that as human beings, we want to gravitate to what we know, which was 2019, and 2019 was great. And so we would just like that to come back. But I think it really is not going to come back, not the way that it was exactly. And so we have to be ready for change. We have to embrace change, but we also have to change our minds and our mindsets to think about how could I be doing things differently? In other words, how could I be doing things greener? How can I be doing things more sustainably? How can I be doing things that are, more enabled by technology to make and be able to serve my clients in a more efficient and user-friendly manner, etc. And so that's what I think is the most important thing we can do as a people. And, using technology is going to, I think, be a big part of how a successful company versus an unsuccessful company, it's going to differentiate the two. Or a successful human being versus an unsuccessful human being, right? Because everything was forced to go online. And so what I think, though, that the government has to think about doing in order to make sure that we can all capitalize on this shift is we have to fix the digital divide.
Yes.
Because we know that there are people who are not as well connected for various reasons as others. So, for example, those who are disadvantaged economically, and even there is a gender divide as it relates to the digital divide, right? So those are the issues I think we need to address to make sure that there is no inequality as it relates to access to digital services.
Say one last thing is that, as positive as everything that you've heard, which was delightful, obviously, from CEC's point of view, when we first asked Marla if she would, provide some analysis of our annual report, she made it clear that we were going to get a warts and all analysis, or she wasn't going to do it. So we're obviously, like I said, we're delighted with how the analysis has come out, but I want people to understand that this was a warts and all, and there are some things in her analysis that are areas that we need to work on, and we will be working on those. But overall, we're very pleased to have this independent analysis by one of the most recognized economists in the region, and to add that to our annual report means a lot to us.
Well, I think you bode well by doing that sort of analysis, and that would not be unexpected. Someone of her stature to get all that you've received, warts and all, as you put it. Maybe for future, as you've addressed those issues, we'll come on and say, here was a point, here's how we responded. Charlie, I say this to you, public line, privately. I commend you and the team. Continue to stay the course. It's not easy, but then what to say, the race isn't for who? Okay. Ms. Marla, again, thank you very much, and to Charlie and the good team over at CEC, commend you and continue that you will see great success.